Hi, I'm Elena Cabugwas. I'm going to discuss the general introduction. Okay, first, we discuss the naturalistic tradition. What is naturalistic tradition? It is a naturalism and philosophy, a theory that relates scientific method to philosophy by affirming that all beings and events in the universe, whatever their inherent character may be, are natural. Consequently, all knowledge of the universe falls within the pale of scientific investigation. A moral philosopher is concerned with a human act. So, human act is the human activity that of man as man. Act of rationality of man involves understanding and free will. A human act can be morally good and morally evil. So the psychologist is interested in the measurement and analysis of the emotions and complexes that an individual may have. He is not concerned with establishing a systematic structure of the way men ought to act. So this is John Locke, the famous English philosopher, once observed that men thought creatively long before Aristotle wrote his logical treatises on how to think. So the very fact of his being human gives him practices in the area of ethics. But the advantage of a continuing experience of moral decision is not enough. Moral decision require analysis on the philosophical level. Every man wants to feel some rational consistency in the kind of deliberate action he experiences.
Good day everyone, I'm Egypt Dukay and I am going to discuss about naturalistic tradition. So what is naturalistic tradition? Naturalism in philosophy, it is a theory that relates scientific method to philosophy by affirming that all beings and events in the universe are natural. Consequently, all knowledge of the universe falls within the pale of scientific investigation. So it means to say, for this moment, naturalistic tradition believes on science, greatly contributed by science because furthermore, it believes on scientific investigation. It needs more provings, scrutinizing ideas on a particular existence. And naturalism presumes that nature is in principle completely knowable. There is a niche, nature, regularity, unity, and wholeness that implies objective laws without which the pursuit of scientific knowledge would be absurd. Man's endless search for concrete proof of his beliefs is seen as confirmation of naturalistic mythology. So, human acts. The human activity that of man as man, act of rationally as man, involves understanding and free will. A human acts can be morally good and morally evil. So, human acts, these are the acts that we do with the use of free will and intellect. They are done freely, deliberately, and voluntarily. These are actions that are proper to humans. Thus, the crucial element of willful consent and knowledge of the action must be present. So, human acts reveal the value of responsibility or accountability. Man or woman takes into responsibility of those actions. So, with those actions in which we are free and responsible, but is not alone in this concern. The psychiatrist and the theologian and the psychologist, each in his own way, each in his own way, has an interest in deliberative and free human action. The world philosopher differs from each of them and the point of view that is uniquely his. Unlike the psychiatrist, the moral philosopher is not concerned with the analysis of the subconscious motivation of any one individual or the exposition of the emotion and the feeling that accompany the actions of individual on their lives. So the moralist differs from the theologian in that the theologian uses the context. So the moralist differs from the theologian in that the theologian uses the content of revelation as a source of his normative morality.
The famous English philosopher John Locke once observed that man thought creatively long before Aristotle wrote his logical treatises on how to think. So there will be moral before science. Formal study of ethics is experience having and continuing to make moral decision. The very fact of his behaving human being gives him patience in the area of affairs. But the advantage of a continuing experience of moral decision is not enough. Moral decision requires analysis on a philosophical level. So every man wants to feel some rational consistency in the kinds of deliberate action experiences. So he is not content to choose act with the reflection. He wants to see whether choices are warranted or perhaps are the best moral choices that we could make. The philosophers presented on this topic have furnished experiences and set analysis moral choices. So this analysis reflect a pluralistic approach to reality. However, even with the differences we still exist. Certain similarities appreciate in a K position. Next is naturalistic of K ethical issues under naturalistic tradition. So, naturalistic tradition in a philosophy is a theory or tradition that relates scientific method to philosophy by affirming that all beings and events in the universe are all natural. Naturalist studies seems not to interfere but to observe, and therefore I assume to have fewer or almost no risk due to its self-existence, incapable to its own direction. In contrast to the analysis of K position, we shall concentrate naturalism based on John Dewey as a person behind the naturalistic tradition, because he expressed the naturalistic temper on a classical manner.
Naturalism based on John Dewey. He expressed that naturalistic temper is one of the classical manner. So yes, John Dewey said that human beings are entirely natural beings and a form of life, and it has evolved on Earth under changing earthly conditions. So for John Dewey, the primary fact about the nature and the reality is dynamic change. So in his view, there are no unchanging realities, unchanging mathematical rules are for Dewey humanly and produce tools that have proven successfully. So, yes, for dealing with changing nature, as human produced tools, they belong to the history and not to the eternal. Yes, that's what the John Dewey explanation about the naturalism. So the four perspective of key issues. So one of it is the value. So the value is defined as the object humans desire and striving that proceeds from the reflective analysis of the novelty presented to each generation. So yes, so the man seeks to transact with nature by intelligence. He increases his own value as well as the nature by the quality of the solutions. He brings in answers to felt need in his life. So yes, the value is it is the naturalist can see the values as being grounded in the nature. So so the real meaning for this value is when you value something, you consider it important and worthwhile. For example, if you value someone's opinion, you will ask the person's advice before making a big decision. Okay? So a value has to do with how much something is worth, either in terms or cash or importance for it. Okay? So on the second one, perspective of the key issues is the obligation. So yes, obligation. It is the claim made upon us by reason for that something are to be done and deserve praise, whereas others are to be avoided and deserve blame. So his general principle is that each man is obligated to the action and responsibility in strict proportion to the cultivation of his mind and the power of his reflective intelligence. Yes, so naturalistic obligation upholds being that does not yet exist. These obligations do not consist in giving them life, but in giving them natural happiness. Okay, so yes, an obligation is a um, course of action that someone is required to take, whether it is illegal or it is moral. So obligations are constraints, they are limit freedom. So people who are under obligations may choose to freely act under obligations. Obligation exists when there is a choice to do what is morally good and what is morally unacceptable. Okay?
Good day, everyone. I am Claire Valiente, and I'm going to report natural law and virtue. Natural law. Natural law is a theory in ethics and philosophy that says that human beings possess intrinsic values that govern their reasoning and behavior. Natural law maintains that these rules of right and wrong are inherent in people and are not created by society or court justice. So there are four principles of natural law. First is that the act must be a good one, or the act itself must be morally good. The second principle is that the act must come about before the consequences or the agent may be not positively well the bad effect but they permit it. The third one is that the intention must be good, or the good effect must flow from the action at least as immediately as the bad effect. And the fourth one is that it must be for serious reason, or the good effect must be sufficiently desirable compensate that allowing effect. Virtue. Virtue is the power for moral action that enables man to act with ease and order in some art of his life. Virtue are naturalistic in the sense that the values they uncover are the virtues supplied by natural itself, understood to be built into our biological ways and set by nature which sets the shape and point of moral life. It is very important to recognize the moral virtue develops over a long period of time.